This is World Now on TVC News. Thank you for joining us. Palestinian civilians in the southern Gazan city of Rafah voiced despair on Monday as Israel dropped flyers urging them to evacuate for their own safety ahead of a limited military operation. Areas designated for evacuation currently shelter some 250,000 people, many of whom have already been displaced from other areas in the Gaza Strip. We have more details in this report.
Palestinian demonstrators disrupted northeastern commencement ceremony meant to celebrate the class of 2024. Students could be heard chanting pro-Palestinian messages, interrupting speakers on stage, forcing a university dean to quiet the crowd.
We respect your passion and opinions. We respect your right to voice them in the appropriate setting. Out of respect for your community and honored guests, I ask that you let us continue with this event.
Israel's military has ordered Palestinians to move out of eastern Rafah, warning it is about to use extreme force in southern Gaza. The order follows a night of intense Israeli bombardments that killed 22 people in Rafah, including 8 children. Early on Sunday, Hamas fired rockets at the Karim Abu Salim crossing, killing 3 Israeli soldiers. The Palestinian presidency has said the U.S. will be responsible for the genocidal results of Israel's Rafah's operation, calling on Washington to take action to prevent it. Presidential spokesman Nabil Abu said the U.S. administration provided financial and military support to Israel and encouraged the government to continue massacres against Palestinians. He called on the U.S. to act immediately and prevent genocide and displacement in Gaza. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu has rejected ceasefire proposals because he says Hamas' call for a withdrawal of all troops from Gaza and an end to the war is unacceptable. Mr. Netanyahu said agreeing such proposal will leave Hamas intact and leave the possibility of another attack in future. Hamas said in a statement it was still keen to reaching a comprehensive, interconnected agreement that ends the aggression. Israeli protesters have renewed demands on the government of Netanyahu to secure the release of citizens taken hostage by Hamas in Gaza since the outbreak of the war on October 7. Hundreds gathered outside Netanyahu's house in the town of Caesarea to call on him to step down and hold early elections.
Well, let's now bring you another report. At the place where hundreds of thousands of Jews were murdered and has become one of the symbols of the Nazi extermination machine, the March of the Living takes place once again for the 36th time. Survivors and the hundreds of thousands of grandchildren in Israel see the current situation feels just like the Holocaust. We have more in this report.
Marking the 80th anniversary of the deportation of the Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz, Birkenau, and for the fellow survivors and many loved ones.
81 years after the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, few survivors are still alive to recount the horrors endured. 11 million people died during the Holocaust, including 6 million Jews. Yom Ashua in Hebrew, the day of the Holocaust, falls on the 27th of Nisan in the Hebrew calendar, which coincides with May 6th in the Gregorian calendar this year. It honors the 6 million Jews and commemorates the anniversary of the Ghetto Uprising, the largest Jewish armed resistance movement against the Nazi military through the Second World War. Marking 80 years since Hungarian Jews were deported, survivors helped light candles during a remembrance ceremony at the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles. Another survivor of multiple concentration camps spoke as part of a remembrance ceremony.
And now, for our candle lighting ceremony, I would like to invite the following individuals for our candle lighting ceremony, where we'll light 6 candles in memory of the 6 million who perished. Please wait with your applause until they're all on stage. Lighting the first candle are Hungarian-born survivors Eva Nathanson, Mary Bauer, Dr. George Bercy, Eva Bretler, Erica Fabian.
I am getting so emotional. It's so hard for me to continue. I have so much to say, and everybody said it before me. I thank you for being here, for giving me the honor to speak, especially today, because May is my birthday month, and I will be 97-year-old in a few weeks. I am here to tell you, and you realize that I am here and you can watch me and hear me. He didn't win. I am the mother of 2 sons, the grandmother of 3 grandchildren. I won. We won. Love won. Thank you.
The March of the Living, commemorating the victims of the Holocaust, also held in Budapest. Nearly 100 Holocaust survivors were transported by electric cars as part of the march, heading to the railway station. The 20th March of the Living event will also commemorate the victims of last year's October 7th attack in Israel. The main goal of the international organization is the education and upbringing of young people, primarily non-Jewish people. 3,200 students from all over the world are taking part in this year's international march. Life across Israel came to a halt this morning as a 2-minute-long siren sounded to mark a moment of silence for Holocaust Remembrance Day. On Holocaust Remembrance Day, places of entertainment are closed and memorial ceremonies are held throughout the country. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected international pressure to halt the war in Gaza in a fiery speech marking the country's annual Memorial Day, declaring if Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone.
שהכוונה של המרצחים והאנסים ועורפי הראשים.
The message delivered in a setting that typically avoids politics was aimed at the growing chorus of world leaders who have criticized the heavy toll caused by Israel's military offensive against Hamas militants and have urged the sides to agree to a ceasefire. Soldiers singing, "Every person has a name," Holocaust survivors' lights and beacons, chanting of Psalm 83, Psalms of Asaph, and chanting of Merciful God.
Let's come back to Africa, where the ongoing war in Sudan has torn apart 3 cities of the capital, and they have become isolated areas from each other as a result of the continuing fighting in the country. Hunger and starvation are spreading across the country as a civil war that erupted in April 2023 shows no sign of abating. Civilians caught in the fighting and more than 68 workers and food security experts are also suffering severe food shortages. Sudanese journalists are facing a relentless assault as the country's ongoing conflict between the military and the rapid support forces continues to wreak havoc on the media landscape. Talk about the war between Israel and Palestine, and especially that evacuation notice being given to those in the southern Gazan city of Rafah to move because of their own safety and an upcoming limited military operation by the Israeli army there. Joining us from Belfast in Northern Ireland via Zoom is Francis Hughes. Thank you for joining us on World Now. Well, this war now has lingered for more than 7 months, and Israel has directed Palestinian civilians in Rafah to move even further. What is the implication of this evacuation notice for the about 250,000 people who are sheltering there?
Okay, well, I think the first thing that I would say is it's not a war between Palestine and Israel. It's an asymmetrical war between what's considered to be the 4th largest army in the world against people that have no tanks, they have no airplanes, and they have no navy. This is an attack upon the innocent civilian population of Gaza. As you've alluded to, the fact that after 7 months, we now have upwards of 36,000 people dead. 15 or 16,000 of them are children. There are perhaps 80,000 injured and permanently maimed for life. People who have lost limbs, people who have lost their eyesight, people who have lost their opportunities to work and feed their families. This is a war, a genocidal war upon the people of Gaza. And the fact that Rafah is basically the last standing city in Gaza, what Netanyahu and his war criminal apartheid racist regime want to do is destroy Rafah street by street and each part of the city as they go forward with this abominable, inhuman attack upon the civilian life, the civilian infrastructure, and the civilian population of Gaza. This is nothing short of a Holocaust in itself, to attack civilian people, to destroy hospitals, to murder doctors. This is not a war. This is an asymmetrical ethnic cleansing of Gaza by a racist war criminal cabinet.
Well, you have called, the Prime Minister and, his cabinet, war criminals and all that. But then, for the benefit of the fact that, this is media, this is national television. So definitely, would await the courts to actually speak to that. But then let's talk about how this war has been on. We know there have been efforts, for restoration of peace. But then Israeli Prime Minister says that complying with the demands that have been put forward by Hamas to cease the war would actually equate to surrender. What do you make of that, considering what actually birthed this ongoing crisis, the 7th of October attack on southern Israel?
Well, the conflict between the Palestinian resistance groups and the occupational forces of the Zionist regime have been going on long before October the 7th. That was just one incident and one episode of 75 years of occupation of Palestine by the Zionist regime. Netanyahu doesn't want peace. These peace talks are purely to find a way to release the hostages or the prisoners that the Palestinian resistance have captive in Gaza. The Israelis and the Zionists and the Americans who are supplying every bomb and supply the aircraft that fire those bombs, they are fully involved in the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. They have no reason to finish with their attack. So long as Rafah is intact, people in Gaza will have a refuge.
But Mr.
They're going to destroy Rafah.
Mr. Hughes, we've heard the U.S., for instance, the President Joe Biden and even the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, continuously make a case for, a cessation of hostilities, really. We have heard them talk to Benjamin Netanyahu about the need to not escalate, further escalate the war. So are you saying that they are still very much involved in what's going on?
100%. I don't listen to what the American administration says. I watch what the American administration does, and it is supplying the arms that are murdering innocent men, women, and children in Gaza. It is supplying the political cover in the United Nations Security Council so that there is no legal recourse brought against the Zionist regime. They could stop this war in an instant. One telephone call from genocidal Joe Biden to the war criminal Netanyahu could stop this in a split second. All he has to say is, no more bombs, no more missiles, no more political cover. Sit down with the Palestinians and negotiate a ceasefire that recognizes their rights and dignity as citizens and as human beings. So long as he refuses to do that, he is complicit in every death in Gaza, and I hold Joe Biden more responsible for the deaths in Gaza than I do Netanyahu.
Well, you understand Israel also has its right to self-defense, and what it's said consistently is that it's actually defending its own people. And as a matter of fact, speaking at the Holocaust commemoration, Benjamin Netanyahu was quoted to have said that if Israel is left alone, then it would actually stand alone and defend its cause?
If Israel was left alone, Israel would be forced, I would imagine, within 24 hours to sit down and negotiate with the Palestinian people. Because if it stood alone, didn't have America, didn't have the United Kingdom, didn't have France, didn't have Germany, didn't have the EU, it would fold like a house of cards, because Iran and Iraq and Syria and Yemen would use their military powers to demand that the Israelis sit down and hold ceasefire talks with the Palestinians. Without American support, Israel, I do not believe, could exist in its current form.
Well, let's wait to see how the ceasefire talks actually go. Francis Hughes joined from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Thank you very much for talking to us on World Now.
Thank you.
Let's get on to some other stories. 3 bodies found dumped in a well with gunshot wounds to the head have been confirmed as missing tourists, including a U.S. citizen. Relatives of American Jack Carter Rhoad and Australian brothers Jake and Callum Robinson identified their bodies without having to perform genetic tests. 3 Mexican citizens previously questioned in relation to their disappearance have been arrested on suspicion of kidnapping. The 3 friends were on a surfing and camping trip near the town of Ensenada, about 60 miles south of the border city of Tijuana, when they went missing on the 29th of April and are believed to have been murdered, according to authorities. Baja California Attorney General Ramirez met with parents of the victims on Sunday and reaffirmed the institution's total commitment to continue the investigation. To Canada, where police shot and killed an alleged domestic violence suspect following a pursuit in Orange County. They were called to the 400 block of W. Maple Street at around 10:30 a.m. in regards to reports of a disturbance in the area, according to Ontario Police Department Officer Makura. Officers arrived to learn that 2 women were being threatened by one of their boyfriends who had a history of domestic violence. They were told that the suspect was threatening them with a gun. The suspect was found a short distance away, sitting inside of a car, and despite negotiation attempts, were unable to get the man to cooperate and exit. Instead, police say he fled from the area at a high rate of speed, prompting a pursuit. Elsewhere, Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Paris for a state visit to France at the invitation of French President Emmanuel Macron. Xi said, as important representatives of Eastern and Western civilizations, China and France have a long history of mutual appreciation and admiration. Xi pointed out that the development of China-France relations has not only brought benefits to the 2 peoples, but also injected stability and positive energy into the turbulent world. In the meantime, French President Emmanuel Macron today pressed Xi Jinping to coordinate closely with Europe in the face of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and accept fair global trade rules as the Chinese leader began a state visit to France. Xi's first visit to Europe since 2019 will also see him hold talks in Serbia and Hungary, opening an initial trilateral meeting attended by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Mr. Macron said coordination with Beijing on major crises, including Ukraine, was absolutely decisive.
To improve the resilience of our supply chains. And for example, we tackle excessive dependencies by diversifying sources of critical raw materials. This is why we have negotiated several agreements to widen the number of countries from which we obtain critical raw materials. This is basically de-risking in practice. Our market is and remains open to fair competition and to investments, but it is not good for Europe if it harms our security and makes us vulnerable. And this is why we act. The EU-China relations is a complex relationship. We approach it clear-eyed, constructively and responsibly, because a China that plays fair is good for all of us. At the same time, Europe will not waver from making tough decisions needed to protect its economy and its security.
Jose Molino, a stand-in for a former president banned from running, has won Panama's presidential elections. Authorities unofficially called the race late on Sunday after three of Molino's closest competitors conceded defeat. The former security minister, who was a late entrant to the race after his mentor, President Ricardo Martinelli, was removed from power after being convicted of corruption, secured more than a third of the vote cast in the country of 4.4 million people. More than 77% of 3 million eligible voters cast their ballots for a new president, parliament, and local governments for the next 5 years.
Muy buenas noches a todos ustedes y a todo el país.
Porque el sector de la izquierda perdió.
El PRD, por supuesto.
No, el PRD fue una...
Vamos a escuchar entonces, incluso esto que está pasando es parte de su primera comunicación.